we would meet in my office on Sunday afternoon, usually for a couple of hours.
And as part of the orientation idea that you're talking about, is it true that newly, or I guess I should say it this way, folks who appear to be elected as council members incoming, say, so a primary winner in 2008 who's going to take office in 2009, are there ways in which those folks get orientation through the departments of council as well, or departments of the county as well, by meeting with county department heads, things like that?
I think they were interested in getting that information, you know. As to the extent of us being able to get that information was another matter. I know that the atmosphere as far as the administration was concerned was to prevent us from getting information. And that made it difficult, and I guess I really don't know to what extent the newly nominated people were able to get information, but that was one of our purposes, was to say, finance knows this, purchasing people know this, and there were a lot of questions about the finance department, our budget, and also as I recall, our purchasing, you know, county purchasing.
About how many times would you estimate you met over the course of the summer of 2008 with folks who had won the primaries?
I'm saying around 5 times. It could have been more than that, but we also had people that were just interested in government come in and listen to what we had to say and make suggestions as well. It was rather open, you know. And I think Mr. Beckwith attended. Tom Beckwith, he was like a retired accountant. We were trying to get advice and share ideas so that we would be able to make an intelligent judgment about how to run a county that we consider to be pretty much out of control, or as far as information is concerned.
Now, Ms. Floyd and Mr. Wilson had also won primaries in 2008.
That's correct.
So they were going to continue on to council after 2009.
That's correct.
Did you invite Ms. Floyd or Mr. Wilson to these meetings?
Did not invite them because they made it clear that they had great admiration for Mr. Preston. So I did not invite them. If they came, I guess we would have said okay, but I didn't specifically invite those people to come.
Did you talk about Mr. Preston at some of these meetings?
To some degree, as administrator and who was in charge of matters, information, I'm sure that we did.
And generally speaking, what was the concern expressed by the group, if there was a concern expressed, during the course of those meetings?
We didn't know how the money was being spent. We could not get information from, we had, after we got started and we got a kind of an audit report, we located all this money that was being spent but was not verified. There was no documentation for it. You know, there were credit card expenses to one particular councilman who was a great admirer of Mr. Preston. In 1 month, I think, we were learned that he had spent something like $30,000 or so.
Mr. Hearsay, I mean, with respect to contents of documents that have not been presented inside a court statement, basically referring to a document that its contents aren't even before the court.
First, I think it's not hearsay. He's just explaining something that he learned during the course of his work in 2009, and I was just going to clarify.
I'll overrule the objection.
Mr. Waldrep, the audit you're talking about.
Now, I'm talking about Mr. Bob Daniels' audit reflected undocumented expenditures, which were extravagant, you know, in our judgment, you know, at that time, and it was a great concern to us, along with other matters.
I agree the objection to audit is also not before the court. I mean, that's the document that he's referring to, that's not in evidence.
Well, he didn't quote the document. I think he said unauthorized expenditures that total to a certain amount. I haven't heard him yet say anything that he says directly came from the document.
Well,
He said he reviewed it.
Yeah, he was just testifying about the documents contents, that there were unauthorized transactions. If they want to put in an expert report, then they should get the expert on the stand. They should put his report in the right way. They should lay the foundation. They should have the compliance with Rule 7.
I'm going to give you an opportunity to cross-examine him on those points, obviously. And again, I haven't heard him indicate that he's directly quoting from the document. My understanding of the testimony was it was information that he learned during these meetings. One of the documents they reviewed was this audit report from someone, and but I didn't hear him say that he was quoting directly from that document. There could have been other documents, I guess, that were involved in what he was referring to. And you certainly have a right to test the basis of his opinion concerning those things.
I understand.
So my ruling would remain the same. You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. And just to clarify for the court, Mr. Waldrep, what you're talking about in terms of these things you've seen were from a report of Mr. Bob Daniel, but that occurred in 2009, is that right?
I think so. I believe that was the day.
All right, so what I want to do is take you back to 2008 and the meetings you were having with some of these folks who had succeeded in winning their primaries to ask what were the concerns at that point in time. This is before you knew any results of any audit.
It was still the spending issue and the information issue. And if I may, when I was elected chairman, I pretty much ran my campaign on the basis of transparency and clarity and helping. I thought that was important. And the first statement that I made upon my election as chairman to the public and to the rest of the council that was my intent was to seek clarity in government. That did not receive a warm look at that time from the administration.
And did some of the primary winners in June of 2008, who you were meeting with, people like Mr. Moore and Mr. Allen and Mr. Dunn, did they seem to share that same view of open government?
They seem to, yes. I think they've continued to do that.
At your meetings with these folks during the summer of 2008, did you ever talk about the possibility of doing an audit of some kind of Anderson County records?
Yes, we did. Yeah, general discussion on that.
Did this group that was meeting on occasion in your office, did it have any authority to act for the county?
Absolutely none.
And to your knowledge, did that group ever make any kind of a plan to fire Mr. Preston after it came to power in January of 2009?
No, the only plan that came up that I recall was we had a workshop at one time, and Mr. Moore had prepared a list of items that were of concern to him, such as purchasing and what have you. That might be an exhibit in this trial, I'm not sure. But that was provided to me at a meeting, I think it was in August the 5th, maybe, of that year, 2008. And I shared that letter that came from Mr. Moore with the rest of the 2008 council. And we had a great exchange in there between me and Mr. Wilson, Mr. Ron Wilson, about the idea of an audit and also the idea of putting Mr. Preston on administrative leave, and also the finance director, Ms. Humphreys, on administrative leave, while we did an audit to determine what was the status of the books.
And you were what were you talking about in terms of an audit? When would such an audit occur, if at all?
Well, that was to be determined, but I think at that particular meeting, I was requesting council this 2008 council to wait until we got to 2000, the next council, and to defer that action on that. And I think that was agreed because the prior council, 2008 council, had already prepared an ordinance for an audit, but it was a penny in, penny out audit. And I don't know how familiar you are with auditing. I've continued to learn more, but that would be the most expensive kind of audit that you could possibly have, and it would not be really productive of the information we were looking for. That kind of audit is when you go out and count the nuts and bolts in the transportation department, things of that nature. We were looking for a focused audit that was focused on the main part of the expenditures, you know. So we had a big discussion on that, but having said that, the council, it was a consensus of the 2008 council to wait until 2009 until the new council was seated.
Wait till then to allow the new council to direct whether or not
to direct it. That's correct.
And what the scope of the audit might be.
Beg pardon?
And what the scope of any audit might be.
Yeah, and the scope and timing and also the person that was going to conduct the audit.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
Yes, you may.
Mr. Waldrep, you referenced it. I'm going to show you now what's been pre-admitted as plaintiff exhibit number 2.
Right.
Asked if you can identify, is this a document that reflects minutes of a workshop that was held by 2008 council members on August 5th, 2008?
It does.
And is this talking about what you just mentioned, the discussion about whether or not to have an audit in 2009?
I believe it does.
If you would look just to try to clarify on the second page of the document that you have in front of you, which is the first page of actual minutes. I'm going to blow up a portion on the screen, but if you look at the very beginning, it appears that Mr. Thompson, who was the chair of county council at the time, is making a statement to the group at that meeting, correct?
Yeah.
And he references at the very beginning on page 35 of the budget ordinance, section 48. The caption is special audit, and it appears that he actually reads from a budget ordinance of Anderson County talking about a special one-time audit that was going to be a total, complete, penny in, penny out audit. Is that the audit that you were talking about that had already been approved by county council in 2008?
Yes, it was.
And that was the one you mentioned, it sounded like that would be, if it were done or conducted, it would be a very time-consuming, expensive audit.
Yeah, not only expensive, but would not serve the purpose of getting down to what we needed to determine. And let me say this, when Mr. Finney, I think, was the auditor at that point, and when I would ask Mr. Finney questions about the audit, it seems that it would always get back to controls, you know, how the money was being controlled. You see, we had a budget process that apparently allowed the administrator to shift funds from one department to the next. That's can be done, you know, and is done. It depends on how much you're doing that and what the amounts are and what the justification is for. You know, those were some of the things that we were concerned with, because the whole time I was on council, this idea of shifting money around like walnuts and the pea under the walnut, nobody could ever figure out where it was sometimes. So that was just some of the thoughts that we were going through when we were trying to understand the process. We were talking to each other. We were trying to talk to county employees. We were trying to talk to the auditors that were doing this.
And the 2008 audit that's referenced in the budget ordinance that had already passed, Do you recall who voted in favor of that penny in, penny out, complete audit back in June of 2008?
You know, I'm trying to think. I know it passed, you know. And to tell you the truth, I could have voted against it on the basis it was penny in, penny out audit. I believe I did. Help me with that.
Well, do you remember, I mean, is there, if you looked at the actual budget ordinance document that's voted on to sign, would that help you remember?
Yeah.
All right, well, I'll just show it on the screen. I don't intend to offer it into evidence, but I'll see if this will refresh your memory. This is ordinance number 2008-027, Mr. Waldrep, which is the one that Mr. Thompson referred to in the minutes of the meeting that you have in front of you. And if you look at the following page, this is the portion of the ordinance that was actually read by Mr. Thompson, talking about the penny in, penny out audit. And the last page shows all who voted on it. And I don't know if you can make it out from there. I can give you a copy if it helps you refresh your memory and see it better.
Yeah, I see that, and I'm trying to recall why I voted the way that I voted.
But what I'm really wanting to know, Mr. Waldrep, is do you recall that many of the supporters of Mr. Preston voted in favor of that very extensive audit?
Yes, sir.
Okay. That's all I wanted to ask you about that. At the conclusion of, well, let me ask this, I guess. During the course of the August 2008 meeting, the minutes of which you have in front of you, did you make a statement or comments to the county council members who were assembled at that meeting?
I did. Well, now, understand this was a workshop meeting. Minutes were taken of it, but my understanding was nobody could really take a vote at that time because it was just a workshop. And as we discussed the audit, I made some statement about, well, the elephant in the room is the new council that's coming on in 2009. And I said, I have a letter or communication that had been delivered to me shortly before the workshop, I think, by Mr. Moore. And Mr. Moore was more or less taking it upon himself also to speak for Mr. Allen and for Mr. Dunn about what their wishes were, you know, as far as any action that council would take with auditing and with purchasing and some of these things. I think it was about a 1 page or page and a half letter. And I just simply, I think I read that out to the council.
And did you see anything wrong with advising the sitting 2008 council members about your understanding of what these primary winners had in terms of concerns about an audit that might be conducted in 2009?
No, I actually thought that they might be pleased to know. I thought that's kind of a stretch in a way because of the atmosphere, but I think in the ideal world, a sitting council member would want to know how his replacement is going to vote, just to know where the county's going, you know, where they're headed financially and how they're going to be arranged. So I saw absolutely nothing inappropriate with communicating that information to them, particularly at a workshop. We weren't taking any action at that time.
And did you make mention during the comments you made in those minutes about the possibility of placing the county administrator and county finance department head on some sort of administrative leave if and when an audit might ever occur in 2009?
That was communicated, and that was, let me say, that was not my idea, but an idea that I was not adverse to allow Mr. Preston and Ms. Humphrey to be put on administrative leave so that we could take a look at the books. And I think that's kind of common practice.
You don't want the folks that you were sort of looking behind to be in charge during the time that you're looking behind.
Right.
If the group of folks that had won the primaries, plus you and anyone else who was meeting in 2008, if you had wanted to do something to fire or suspend or place Mr. Preston on leave in 2008, could you do it?
No, sir.
Did the sitting county council, the 2008 council, ever express any desire to do anything to get rid of Mr. Preston during 2008? Prior, and I'll say prior to November.
The council as a whole, the 2008?
Right.
I don't believe they ever did.
Did you believe, based on your understanding of Mr. Preston's employment agreement, that an audit could be accomplished by Anderson County in 2009 without violating the terms of Mr. Preston's contract?
Oh, yeah. I felt it was our duty. I mean, we had the financial fiduciary responsibility of running that council and running the money coming in and the money going out. And so that's why I felt very strongly that we had not only the right to do it, we had the duty to do it.
And Mr. Waldrep, would you personally have supported any action by any county council that you were a member of to breach provisions of your county administrator's contract?
No.
At some point in time in 2008, did you get word that Mr. Preston was making a claim against the county concerning his employment?
I did. I got a letter from his attorney, Mr. Hoskins, I believe it is, from over in Greenville. And Mr. Hoskins wrote me a letter which he was giving his legal opinion that there was a theory that Mr. Preston's employment had been, his agreement had been breached, and this was based upon a theory of anticipatory breach, which was somewhat of a novel idea that I was not totally aware of, nor aware of it as far as employment law is concerned. I've seen it used in contract law, building, construction, things of that nature, but I was not that familiar with it. And well, have I answered your question? I probably don't.
No, you certainly did. May I approach, Your Honor?
You may.
Mr. Walker, I'm now going to show you what's been pre-admitted as plaintiff's exhibit number 3, because I believe this is what you're talking about. Is this the letter that you received a copy of in September of 2008 from Mr. Hoskins, who represented himself to be the lawyer for Mr. Preston?
Yes, sir. And the letter goes on to say that he felt